going to record this just so I can refer back to it. And so feel free to take notes, but if you want to copy this tomorrow, hit me up. I'm sure we'll have some other guys jump on here in a little bit. I know I've gotten a few texts from guys that couldn't make it tonight since, normally we do Monday, Wednesday, and I obviously switched it. But so, in Georgia, and I'll be honest, I told our guys today, I almost would have rather them said come back in July, but you can have your whole roster or you can have 40 kids. Being in the situation we're in right now, the way that I have interpreted the rule, and I know you other Georgia guys tell me if your county is treating it differently, you can have 20 players per sport on your campus at one time. And it's not even 20 players, 20 people per sport. So if you've got 18 kids, it's 2 coaches. You can't have 18 and 2 in the weight room and 18 and 2 out on the field, per my understanding of the rule. It is 18 period. And so, you just logistically, we've always felt like we do a pretty good job, unless we've got 7-on-7 or something against somebody else. We've always felt like we've done a pretty good job of getting our kids in, lifting, running, practicing, and being efficient. Well, that day just got doubled now because we're having to work with such smaller groups. So what are you, some of you other guys? First of all, Georgia guys, is your understanding of the rule the same as mine? And I know Smitty's on here now, and he's an important guy, and so he can probably answer. But because that's my understanding of the rule is it's 20 people per sport. You can have 15 sports going on your campus, but you can only have 20 per sport at one time on your campus. Is that accurate?
Did you guys cancel all your 7-on-7s and everything in Georgia too?
As of right now, yeah, no contact, no competition with anybody else. So,
hey Pete, BJ Lewis here at South Paulding.
Yeah, man.
Reading into that GHSA rule that it said recommendations and restrictions, it doesn't really clarify on what is a recommendation and what is a restriction from what I can tell and what we discussed in our coordinators meeting the other day. So, it says campus/facility.
Yes.
So that's what we didn't, per sport. So is it, necessarily on campus per the sport, or is it the facility, and what are you considering to be one facility?
We've reached out to clarification for the same reason, BJ, because we looked at it at first like that, and then after just looking at it, I started to think it differently. And I know certain counties, I know Matt, my understanding is for Scythe County has told you guys it's 20 people at a time, not 20 groups spread out around campus.
Yeah. We actually our head coach talked to Kevin Giddens. They worked together previously at, I think at Colquitt. So he talked to Kevin Giddens, and Kevin Giddens said, it's 20 players, period. You can't be – because we had talked about maybe going to like a rec park that wasn't on campus.
Yep.
Or maybe using one of our middle schools, and he said, no, it's 20 players or 20 people total, period, at one time. You can't be in different parts of town or anything. It's, 20 players working at one time.
Which is a very easy to understand rule, but they haven't it'd be nice if they'd word it like that. So there's no ambiguity. So you're not going to have somebody, because that was our whole thing was we don't want to have to pay a damn fine because we're already talking about a year where we're not going to be pulling in gate money. And that's all we all survive. Fundraisers and gate money, and we haven't been out selling cards, and we're probably not going to have a whole bunch of people showing up at games. I mean, I maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. But that's interesting. What's for you out of state guys? I know Nick, obviously y'all are living in the free world in Alabama, but are you having to deal with the same grouping issues and like in Texas, Wes? Are y'all dealing with the same kind of stuff?
Nick, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead. There is no limitation for us based on my understanding on how many people we can have at a time. At Clay, we're kind of taking a little extra precaution compared to what the state's kind of making us do. And when we're having, we're fortunate enough, we have a basketball weight room and a football weight room. So we're breaking it up into, only 20 kids in the weight room at a time, 10 in the other weight room, and everybody else doing field work. And then we'll spray everything down, clean it up, and then kind of flip it around and then send that group, those 40 kids that were inside, they'll go outside, and the other 40 will come in, have fresh, clean stuff. And to my understanding, we can use a football. So we're going to kind of, like I said, play it easy on that and not jump right all in at once. But, hopefully down in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to do some, team 7-on-7 and kind of just try and limit contact and stuff with that. But that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
In here, it's the UIL, which governs us, has been just absolutely as ambiguous as they can be. And there's no, it's just a suggestion. Everything is just a suggestion, but no good full and well that if you do anything more than that suggestion, they're going to break it off in your ass.
Yep.
So play nice, boys. It's been pretty much what we've all been told. But what we can do is we can have 10% of our capacity in our weight room at one time. Well, depending on where, even in our own school district, the size of our weight room isn't the same. So, and then we actually have a separate time that we can do sports specific stuff. So we can have 2 hours essentially of off season and then another hour of football specific. But when we do the off season stuff, we can't have groups. We have to have 10% of the weight room, and we can't have groups of more than more than 16 in any group. But when we do our football stuff outside, we can have groups of 20. But they're supposed to stay 6 feet apart, and if they're just standing around, like 10 feet apart.
So you're putting in midline.
Right. And you can't have any competition against each other. So you can't do any one-on-one, and I'm fine with that. I mean, shit, it's June.
Right.
But like, so we can, what we've kind of determined is like we can throw individual routes and things like that. The linemen can be down working with each other, doing fundamental things, just spread out, which is okay. But the best one is, so like after every time we throw individual routes. And so like our older kids go and then our younger kids come out, I'm supposed to wipe down all the footballs with alcohol between those two.
Yeah, we have to do that too.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't know that how, if someone takes the football and sneezes directly onto it and then I put my hand on it, I've got a chance to get the virus. But so ours is, we're very thankful to be able, just like everybody else, we're thankful to be able to do something, but we hope ours changes soon.
Well, I mean, I know one of the issues that we're having to deal with, because like in Georgia, like I said, you're maxed out at 20. And I guess my question is for Georgia guys and for out-of-state guys here, the way that we understand the rule is coaches can't go from group to group, right? So let's say we group our kids, and there's an O-line, D-line group, a older guys skill group, a younger guys skill group, running back, linebacker group, whatever, and we get our magic numbers right. I'm the offensive coordinator. The head coach and I spend the whole day in the weight room. We have the running back coach also spends time in the weight room. Nobody else in our staff is a weight room teacher. Now, that doesn't mean there's not other guys capable of running it. There are, right? But if I can't cross over and I have to stay with my original group of kids, what liability are we putting ourselves in now when we put somebody in the weight room that's maybe not trained, that's not, not as skilled and not as knowledgeable when it comes to dynamic movements, right? Am I understanding that rule right, Georgia guys? And is anybody else seeing that issue where, I mean, if you're the head coach, you need to be able to address all your kids, even if it's you standing in the frickin' bleachers with a megaphone. You know what I'm saying? One group of kids or 5 group of kids shouldn't get punished because you're locked in over here with this group of kids. So I'm curious to know if anybody else has kind of crossed that bridge or dealing with that same scenario.
Yeah, we're definitely dealing with that. But the way that we understand the rule now, this may not be right, but the way we understand the rule is the groups can't change, but the coaches can be in more than one group. So if you start, let's say you start with groups 2 and 3, you have to stay with those, but you can be with multiple groups.
Okay.
And the way they explain to us, if you're in 2 groups and somebody in one group gets the virus, they're going to shut both groups down for 2 weeks. Anybody that was in a group that had somebody that get the virus, if anybody was in contact with them, shut down for 2 weeks.
Okay. One person I talked to today said their AD had told them head coach and strength coach could stay in the weight room and could be with every group. And I know Smitty's giving me the thumbs up on that. And I was like, that's awesome. Where's that written? And they were like, let me find it. And then they sent me a text an hour later. They're like, I can't find it. And I'm like, that's cool, because that's what I want the rule to be. But I need it to be written down somewhere. So, but that makes sense to me, Matt, because that was the other thing. I mean, if you're at a small school, you probably don't have a huge roster, and you can probably manage your numbers to some degree because you're not going to have a huge coaching staff. But even if you're at a place that's a pretty good sized program, if you got a bunch of community guys that work full-time jobs during the summer, how do you manage that so you can get all the kids in? So that I hope that's the case. That's good to know. Out-of-state guys, y'all dealing with any of that at all? Is there? I mean, your numbers, obviously, the way you're being able to do it's a little bit different. Talked to a buddy in Tennessee. I was saying earlier, they started today. Let me pull his text up real quick. So they took they had 9 groups of 9 kids, and they put them through like 5 or 6 stations, and there was a coach at every station, because they can have as many kids as they want on campus, but they have to be grouped by 10, essentially. So I thought that was interesting, because with 9 groups, they were basically able to, I think he said what they did was every group had one coach that traveled with them, and then I think the head coach and the coordinators were able to float and go from group to group, so to speak. Which was interesting. Is there anybody that's having to dealing with grouping and keeping their numbers down that's found an efficient way? I mean, for us, like I said, we've talked about it's O-line, D-line, get them together, even though they can't compete against each other. So many of our kids are going to work 2 positions, and for most kids, it's both sides of the ball. If you're a guard, you're probably also learning to play end, especially if you're a young kid. So for us, that makes sense. Anybody else found a different way of maybe grouping that you think's logical?
Well, we're doing, and a couple other people, we're doing our best 18 offensive guys in a group. Then the next group will be the best 18 defensive guys. And then the next group will be the next best 18 offensive guys. So your 2s and your 3s.
Yep.
That's how we're breaking it up. And then we've got young guys in a separate group.
We thought about doing the exact same thing, Coach. For the sake of being able to do some install, that's a great way to handle it, right? You can get out there on air, you can work your install, you can talk through things. You can get them in the classroom if you wanted to, and get them on the board. And the only reason we went away from that, like I said, was because we've got so many dudes that cross over.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anybody else?
Yeah, we're similar to you guys, Pete. We're doing the same way, OL, DL together, because we have, like you guys, have a lot of guys that cross over, and then put a big group of wide receivers, DBs together. Now, one thing we did, and this may be just wishful thinking on our part, is we put a quarterback or a couple quarterbacks in with our wide receivers, DBs, more so hoping that maybe in the next 2 to 3 weeks that they'll let us have a ball out there.
Yep.
So we put wide receivers, DBs, a couple quarterbacks, had kind of an older group of that and a younger group of that.
We put our quarterbacks with the receivers and DBs for the same hope, that's what somebody I was talking to earlier that I said, they've got a plan on, but they're hoping it's a 3-week plan. And they're hoping that after that we can get the balls out and start doing some different things, because obviously that's going to affect it.
We've kind of done, similar stuff, but one thing we did with quarterbacks is we split them up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got one quarterback with the same that y'all are saying, one quarterback that's linebacker and running backs, because then he's just giving them different looks. Another quarterback with the O-line, D-line, and different leadership techniques and stuff all at the same time. And then one thing that we have addressed and haven't addressed is freshmen, right? Like that's to me, that's the wild card going into August.
I agree. And, we spent time talking about that, and we're at a place anyway, if you're familiar with Sprayberry at all, we've got some kids that are close enough they can walk or ride their bike. We've got some kids that have no business trying to do that. We've got some kids who can get a ride and some kids who they're not going to get a ride, you know. And with our upperclassmen, they find a way. It's not much of an issue. But with our freshmen in particular, we've never gone this deep into it without having some type of contact with them. You know, we were scheduled right before all this in to have a parent meeting with our ninth grade parents. You know, then we get those guys in for spring and we start being able to imprint on them a little bit. And that's another thing for us is we always want those kids around our older kids. You know, we've worked for 3 years at Sprayberry to try to change the culture and make it what we think it's supposed to be. And a large part of that is getting those upperclassmen to lead and imprint on those young kids. And that's gone. You know, we don't know what that's going to look like either. That I agree. You know, anybody else, as far as anybody done anything just aggressive to try to get with the freshmen and figure out what their plan is going to look like? Are you going to try to do them the same?
Coach, for us, we don't know exactly what we're going to do in Kentucky yet, but myself, along with our freshman coaches, have a freshman group me message with our guys, and we send them a very modernized, you know, not as in detailed workouts as varsity. But, you know, we've had some success with that, but there are a lot of kids, obviously, that we've had trouble making contact with. And for us in the city, you know, we have magnet programs at all the high schools, so kids can be out of district as an incoming freshman. Like, for example, at Douglas, we have a biomed program. So, like, if you get accepted in biomed, you can be out of district, and we don't have that list yet.
Right.
So I'm getting emails about kids in our district, you know, school that I don't even have a list for yet. So everything's behind, obviously, across the country with all that stuff. And if we are able to do groups of 10 or under, I've kind of done the same thing you guys are talking about, just base them upon positions and throw a quarterback. We don't have too many of them. We have 3, you know, really 2 that can play, that we put, you know, with our skill guys, very similar, but obviously that's all if we're able to do anything. We're well behind some of you other guys, but it has helped me at least come up with guidelines and sets of plans that other states have done. So that's been really good.
So I got another question talking about freshmen. I'm just curious about y'all's opinion. We talked about this today. You know, you look around. So here in Atlanta, one of the premier private schools in Atlanta had a drive-through parade graduation, just like a lot of people in Georgia have done. We had ours last week. And they had theirs on Friday, and by Sunday, several kids from that group have tested positive, and there's something now like 15 or 16 kids from that one graduation class from that one small private school that are now in quarantine and tested positive. And it's because they're hanging out and they're doing all this. And so, like, Georgia's opened back up and the numbers don't look bad, but you look around, how fast are things going to change? And at what point do they say no sub-varsity sports? Does anybody else have a feeling that could be coming?
I mean, I've prepared our freshman staff for that. Obviously, I don't want to see that, but for me personally, I have had those conversations with our coaches because our athletic director has told me to plan for a limited roster. So if that does occur, then obviously that would be, you know, it would suck, but at the same time, we do have a plan for that.
And I just think you look at the suggested CDC guidelines, which I honestly don't know how any public school in America can operate under those guidelines. It's crazy. But you look at it, and if they're not letting us put kids in the locker room in July, are they going to let us put 50 of them on a bus in August or September? You know, because if we're having to put less than 20 kids on the bus, you're doubling what we're paying for buses now. That's getting expensive, you know. And if you're doing it on Thursday night for sub-varsity games, at least that's when we play ours. I'm real curious to see, you know, I hope for the kids' sake, I hope that those don't disappear. But I'm curious to see if at some point sub-varsity disappears. Smitty, have you heard anything about that, or have y'all talked about that in your county?
My county is being very cautious right now. I think everybody's scared to make decisions because nobody wants to be held liable.
For sure.
They supposedly met today, but we haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
If I don't hear anything, I've let my coaches know. If they put it all on the school, we won't be doing anything until July.
Right.
Just because of logistic wise, it's going to be a nightmare. And then 2, will give us more time to we can watch what everybody else does and learn from their mistakes.
Well, so that's one of the things that we talked about today and wanting clarity. Somewhere in the chain of emails we read, because we talked to some guys that were thinking the same thing, right? If it's up to us, we're going to wait till July. That way, probably won't have to deal with the same numbers. They read somewhere that even if you delay your start, you still have to start in the phase 1 stage. So we were trying to seek clarification on that, because Georgia stage 1 is fairly strict and phase 2 is a little bit better. We're hoping to get to phase 2 in a hurry.
So, Peter, y'all are still in, because y'all were one of the first ones to open, so y'all still haven't progressed past the first.
So we're phase 1 from the Georgia high school activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from GHSA, not necessarily from no, I mean, Lord, if you were on Lake Lanier yesterday, which is one of the bigger lakes in Georgia, you'd have thought we were in stage like 12.
But my parents live right by Pelican Pete's.
Oh yeah.
There was no restrictions at all.
None.
Thought it was a damn party.
Yeah, I got a message from a buddy in Destin yesterday. He sent me a text on Friday. He said, man, it's like half capacity down here. It's going to be a pretty chill weekend. And then he sent me one on Saturday. He was like, never mind. It's never been so damn full. He's like, the outlet malls are closed, so nobody can go shop, so everybody's at the beach. So Georgia doesn't seem to care. I don't think Florida does either. All right, so let me ask you this, fellas, kind of moving along. Obviously, different states for some of us, different rules, different numbers, different all that stuff. One of the things we talked about today is understanding what our goal is the first week or 2 with the kids is probably the most important thing, because that's going to dictate how we group, how we plan, how we do everything else. I think in a perfect world, I think there's a lot of us that from an old school coach mentality would love to bring them in and almost put them through like maxes and a freaking running test, but that's not serving anybody any good, and we've talked about June for us might be 90%, 90% focused on weight room and dynamic movements, and some of those dynamic movements will be some high intensity training and some stuff like that to kind of work on cardio. But I don't, is there a point in us going to run 40s right now? What do you guys think about that? What is your goal when you get your kids back on campus?
One thing that I didn't think about, and one of our younger coaches who's brought up, he goes, most of these kids have been inside, and and ours have been out for last couple of weeks, but all those months where we would be outside doing change of direction and just getting some vitamin D,
yep,
they ain't got, and so we're going to spend the first 2 weeks outside breaking down joints that they haven't broke down, short runs, hurdle drills, all, change of direction, and piss on the weight room for a couple of weeks, hoping kind of like you guys that we can get more in there in July and but I don't know if that, that was one thing I was hoping to hear about tonight too, honestly.
Yeah. Go ahead, Coach. I'm sorry.
No, go.
I was just saying, I'm going to plan as if we can't get in our weight room in the first phase. I'm just guessing based upon how our governor and how our association is very cautious for the most part. I know the state of Kansas, that's what they ruled to do starting June 8th. They can't do anything inside the weight room. They can only do outside activities. So I kind of have a plan for with the weight room and without the weight room. And very similar to Coach Cope, I mean, I think, change of direction movements, core movements, Even doing something simple in your groups, maybe stance and starts, on air, spread out, those type things, just having a rotation where you're breaking those bodies down for a couple weeks. If we're not able to use our weight room quite yet until, maybe later on. So that's a good point.
Boys, I can tell you, if y'all don't have somebody, probably a female coming and doing yoga with your kids, you're missing out.
Yeah.
We could. Yes.
You're not wrong. You are not wrong at all.
You're not wrong in a couple of ways.
I was just going to say, for our O-line, D-line group, I'm leading that, and we're literally 30 minutes a day, mobility and prehab. I mean, that's it, right? And that's going to be our first 2 weeks, and then we'll throw in, a complex lift and this, that, and the other, but it's more teaching, reteaching for the first 1 to 2 weeks.
Our head coach has a decent background in yoga, and so we even during the season typically one day a week we get our kids in the wrestling room, and we put them through some yoga, and our kids love it. They really do. We're in an interesting scenario, and it's a good one to be in, I guess. But we don't have a turf field right now. It's been ripped out. The county's replacing our turf, and our grass field is god awful. And so we're trying to figure out how much are we going to need the grass field for doing yoga and stuff like that, and how much time do we need to put into it between now and then to get it in better shape. We're just so spoiled, I guess, by having the turf, and we're on it all summer. And the only, we usually don't touch the grass very often during the summer. Just the soccer teams do. But yeah, Wes, I'm with you on that, man. Yoga's big. Anybody else? I mean, that's interesting, right? I mean, that's several guys talking about making it functional movement based, trying to just get their bodies back acclimated before you throw them under the bar again.
Yeah, Pete, we obviously we have a couple different scenarios depending on what our county decides to do. So we've done some in the weight room, inside the weight room, out on the field, just trying to change different things up. But we tried to get a jump start on this during quarantine, and have our groups to where they're sending us their videos of them doing their sprints, them doing their run-ins. We did the Nike Run Club thing to track, to make sure that they're getting that movement in.
Smart.
We also did, since Zoom's been a great thing for us, we've done virtual Indy with all of our position groups at least once a week. So we send all of our guys, hey, these are the drills we're going to work on today. And then basically, so we could get football in there as well and try to keep them in a normal state. So whenever we do get back together, they've been coached up, trying to keep their minds busy, but we're also, working their bodies as well.
When y'all did virtual Indy, would you literally, these are the drills, and they would be out in the front yard with their camera, and y'all would say, okay, we're going to work this cone drill right now?
Yep. So basically, I would send all my quarterbacks, send them, hey, these are the 5 drills that we're going to work. These are the materials that you're going to need, or this is how it needs to be set up. I don't care, if you have a towel, a bat, a broom, if you have anything like that, and say, hey, set it up. And then they would all get their phones, and I would tell them to put on headphones that have Bluetooth to connect to the phone, because they all have them nowadays.
Yeah.
So that way they could hear me as I'm seeing them, and then basically I'll give the cadence or whatever, and give the directions and put them through the drills, and they can being able to give them the direct feedback. So that was good. And then sometimes I would get with guys one-on-one, say, hey, these are some stuff I want you to do. I want you to record it, send it to me. And then me and him, we would get on and we would kind of go through, and I would kind of break down mechanics of different things that they need to work on and improve, just to try to keep it about as normal as we possibly could. So that way too, when we get back together, it's going to be a short learning curve. The same thing with getting them, quote unquote, back in shape. Because even if we go in the weight room, man, we're 50%. That's it.
Well, and you, like you said, BJ, I mean, I know your situation, and Liam, you're the same. Y'all are both, Liam, whole new staff, right? Everybody's brand new. BJ offensively, new head coach, but moving up. And so defense will, I'm assuming, stay very similar, but offense will be new. Nick, I know, a little bit of a change offensively with you guys, and so some tweaks going on there. And all of us are out here finding things and trying to get better right now. So that's an interesting take, and that's a good way to handle it, especially I think with new guys. I'm a little pissed at myself right now that I haven't been doing that with my quarterbacks. So, Corley, what you got?
I was going to say the same exact thing. I mean, we've been doing the same thing now in terms of kind of to build off of what you got, Coach, is we've been doing that with mobility, right? So, hey, we're meeting on Monday or whatever at 10 o'clock to install this, right? Because obviously install always goes perfect via Zoom. Yeah. But then at the end, they have a homework assignment, and the homework assignment is to record yourself twice doing a mobility development before, and then you got to send it to me. And then I give them some one-on-one, and they have to do it a third time before they talk, we meet again.
Yeah, I like that. I know, I think one of the interesting things, especially with the weight room, like somebody said earlier, every kid says they're working out. How much control do we really have over what they're actually doing? But, with the weight room, you got some kids that dad's got the bench set up in the basement, right? They can get some work in. Like our offensive linemen, several of them they go to a place here locally that trains, and it's the guys that we trust run it, and they do a great job. And so I got a picture today of my center. He was deadlifting 500 pounds, and he benched 335 for a double today. I'm fired up about it because he wasn't benching 335 when he left us in March, but I'm going to have other kids that haven't touched a bar. You know what I'm saying? So, it's almost going to be dealing with a regular classroom of weight training and not your football kids, because you're going to have kids in there that you're literally starting from the ground up again, and then you're going to have kids in there that have found a way and have even made some gains in all this. I think that's going to be an interesting thing to handle. What go ahead.
Going back to this, and this is something I want to kind of get everybody's input on. One of those rules it talked about in the weight room was the spotters. You can only have side spotters.
Yep.
And that's number one, they haven't been in the weight room. Number two, we're only going to be doing 50%. So spotters, number one, I know is always safety, but it won't be as much. But as the weeks progress, I'm guessing the rules will probably change as far as spotters and distance and all that good stuff.
We talked about that today because the normal setup in our weight room is everything's essentially supersetted together, right? So you may go from squat to push-ups straight into some type of a pull with a band into spotting and then back to squatting, right? And that would be our normal rotation when we're in the weight room. Well, right now, we're basically, with the number of kids we're allowed to have in there, the number of platforms we have, and the fact that it has to be a side spot, we're going to put 3 kids on every platform, and they're all going to squat with their 2 side spotters, and then they're all going to rotate out into the next exercise. And because that does, it changes the setup and the flow of how you operate. Because, we've always tried to build in, a little bit of cardio into our weight room just by the constant movement, but that's got to change under these guidelines. Yeah, that's it. Or other states, are y'all dealing with that? With us, they encourage the spotter to wear a mask, and it's got to be a side spotter, no over the top or behind the back spots.
We in Texas, the spotter's supposed to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. But the other thing they said was, and y'all tell me how you would interpret this. At the end of each set, you're supposed to clean the bar. So is that after every time so if I'm doing 3 sets of 5 on the squat rack, so each time after I do my 5, I've got to clean the bar before I do it again?
That's what it sounds like.
And so what we're going to do is, so if Pete, if you and I are lifting together, I'm going to be in rack 1 and you're going to be in rack 2. So we don't have to change the weights. So that way we don't have to clean the bars until we're both done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we got to stay so spread out, because ours there has to be 10 feet between you and anyone else lifting.
Wow.
So go ahead and figure that one out, boys. And if you saw our weight room, y'all be going, shit. Sorry. I try not to cuss.
No, that's yeah, but that's a good way to do that. I mean, and I was going to ask you guys about safety and cleaning as far as the guidelines are set up in your state. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to shout out my wife real quick. She freaking went to Walmart today and bought, it's like a 16-ounce bottle or 20-ounce bottle of Lysol concentrate. You mix it with water, and the 20-ounce bottle makes like 10 gallons of Lysol disinfectant. She bought 2 bottles and 2 spray bottles for like total of like $11, brought it home and was like, here, clean the weight room. So we're going to go get some, we're going to get some 5-gallon Home Depot buckets, mix that stuff a gallon at a time, fill it in those spray bottles, and we're going to spray and wipe everything every day as often as we're required.
So off of that, I actually brought up to the head coach, well, if the state's mandating it, it should come from somebody who has a bigger bank account than our high school, right?
Yeah.
So he called the AD right then and there, and they had a conversation. So I don't know what that's going on, but just another thing to put into people's heads. Like, look, if the state's going to say we have to clean after every single rep, we'll go up the hierarchy.
We said the same thing. If nothing else, we should have access to the school cleaning supplies.
Actually asked our AD that today. It's funny you bring that up. So he didn't have an answer for that either.
And that's one of the things we talked about is I'm starting to be able to find more things. I know we found a huge thing of hand sanitizer at Costco last week, limited to 1. I could take that to the school. It'll be gone in a week, and it's going to become a point where we're not going to have it. But does the school, because they, the contracts they have with their suppliers, do they have easier time getting hold of that stuff? Can they? And that's, something I guess probably a question to ask our head janitor.
We bought one of those things. It's like a backpack sprayer, and it's a backpack, and you just spray it on, and it dries instantly. So, but that thing was like $1,500. So,
y'all got that big money.
Well, the county actually bought them for us.
That's nice.
Enough of our head coaches got together and complained to them, and they said, all right, well, I guess if that's what we need to do to keep them safe, the county picked it up.
I mean, hell, every school should be provided one of those, if nothing else, just for the wrestling room. I mean, Lord knows you got to keep that clean. So anybody else, any other safety or cleaning protocols that you're using?
You guys hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Coach.
Hey, this is Coach Henderson. I'm up here in PA. I've been listening to you guys. I was putting an air conditioning unit in. But I've been listening to you guys this whole time. And up here, like right now, we really haven't had any, talks with, the school in general, just on when we're going to start. I know we got a deadline from the state. They gave us July 1st, which, is our initial date for us to start practice. But as of right now, they're also going county by county in phases. Letting the guys come out, red phase, green phase, whatever. So we're kind of like, on the back end of things right now. I know there's some counties that are going green this weekend, actually on Friday. And there's a couple, big articles in the paper and stuff about schools. When can they start? And again, even though they're going into the green phase, which is a phase that they can have a big group of 25 to 30 guys on the field, it also comes down to the school administration too. So let them on their grounds, different things like that. I know that's our big conversation we're talking about every day is, if we do get the okay, how do we break our, everything down on our end as coaches to be safe and to be safe with the school, guidelines that they set for us as well.
Man, it's the reality is I'm not a huge fan of talking politics. The reality is, we got dealt with, I think, with a situation that nobody really knew how to handle. And, one of the best things I've heard in a while is you got a bunch of guys that have made a career out of studying diseases and trying to come up with models and predict what's going to happen. And for the first time in a long time, they've got power to speak. And so, you look at the numbers and you say, well, man, some of this stuff seems overblown. And then you look at other numbers and you're like, maybe it's not. Because that's the conversation we had. Like, we're going to spend all this damn time planning. We may get to work in June, and we may be sitting there at the middle of July, and they say, yeah, we're not going back to school in the normal fashion. So, like, and part of that, I guess, is part of my next question. And, I know like BJ said, you guys are already doing stuff, and I think it's awesome. We've been doing install just on Zoom, but I don't see myself needing to be in a hurry. And part of that is because our staff is coming on year 4 and our kids have been in our systems. I don't see a need for us to start with a bunch of X's and O's stuff right now. Because I just don't know if we're going to roll into the middle of July and everything's still going to look the same. What y'all's take on that? I mean, we've kind of let's said as a staff, like let's make the focus more about individual understanding, individual concepts, individual movements and techniques, and then build the big picture on the back end. But I don't know if it's right or wrong.
I think Coach McPeak might be with me here because he's an O-line guy himself, but I'm loving it, right? I'm O-line, so I get to be a technician all day, every day for the next 3 weeks because we've decided that we're not going to install until after July 4th if there's no adjustment regardless, right? So for me as an O-line guy, I mean, we practice in 5x5 boxes anyway. Hell, y'all are already 15 feet apart. So, that's something that I think a lot of skill coaches are going to have to steal some O-line technique of coaching certain things, just because I think it is going to be more one-on-one driven or technician driven, I guess.
Well, and especially right now in Georgia, at least where we can't get a ball out. I mean, we could line up all day and have our receivers run out routes. We can't throw them the ball. And they're only going to run so many post routes with the quarterback just simulating a throwing motion before they look at me like I'm an idiot. I mean, they do that anyway because I usually am an idiot, but I try not to give them any more reason to look at me that way. So anybody else? I mean, yeah, Liam, I'm with you on that. It is, I think for an O-line coach and a DB coach, right? It's like we can do this all day. We can just focus on technique and phase all day long. So
yeah, I've done. Sorry to interrupt, Coach. Go ahead if you wanted to. I don't know if somebody else was talking.
It's you, boss. Take it.
I just, I've been doing some indie stuff as well. In Kentucky, we've had to kind of watch ourselves, though, because the way the ruling of our dead period is we're not really supposed to be coaching, like, on-field stuff. We can do virtual meetings, like, install-wise. And a lot of our kids are pretty familiar where I've been there every year, even though I'm the head coach now. They kind of understand our drill work, kind of what we do. So that's been kind of a blessing where the kids, know me a little bit, obviously. But we just kind of like I couldn't necessarily like send a drill tape out on YouTube or, FaceTime type things. We just have to watch ourselves with that, the way our ruling is in our dead period of this state. But we've done some install meetings and Zoom meetings. We've done our first 4 offensive installs, which that's probably about it for us if we have limited time before we play a season, just for us. Like I've installed 9 runs, but a lot of them are pretty similar gap or zone, stuff. Passing game wise, I mean, we've got our 5 or 6 major concepts and just window dress it. We pretty much got all that done. We finish school tomorrow, so just I've kind of left them alone for about a week to let them get all that stuff finished. And then depending on what our association decides, what our June plan will look like. The main thing that I'm frustrated with, and I know everybody's going through it, is just communication with parents. I obviously as a head coach, that's a very important thing. And just players, I've had a lot of people reach out, what's their schedule, what vacation, if they're able to go anywhere and things like that. So, right now that's just the frustrating part.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, I know we talked about it a little bit today is just as a staff, like, the head coach said, look, man, if you had a vacation planned and you still plan to go, I'm not going to tell you not to. Obviously I prefer it being June than July, but that's always the case. But do what you need to do. And so I appreciate that, even though my beach trip's already been canceled. Same deal with our kids. And that's, I helped Georgia release their guidelines and I was reading them on my phone and started getting texts from players going, is it true? We get to come back on the 8th? It's like, I'll get back to you on that. And then we met with our kids, a couple hours afterwards for a scheduled meeting last week, and had kids asking questions. And at this point, honestly, after the initial release, we've not gotten any additional guidelines from state or county. And so we've had to tell our kids to be patient. Understandably, parents want answers, but hell, we don't have them. And the ones we do have, they can easily change on us because we're not in control.
Yeah,
So,
I was talking with our head coach, and I said, any word? He said, no, I haven't heard anything. So I was actually talking with the AD earlier today because he's the one that does my evals.
mhm.
And I asked him, I said, any update on like when our county is going to meet or whatever? He said Thursday tentatively. He said, but that may change.
Yep.
So we're just sitting here, playing the waiting game. So I'm hoping to know more tomorrow because I got to go back up to, we got teachers going on campus tomorrow and be able to maybe get some stuff in person from the principal. He's a very honest, upfront guy. So, maybe there's something that he can enlighten us on as far as when the decision is going to be made for us.
Yeah, I talked to a buddy that's an AD in another metro Atlanta county, not the one I work in. Talked to him yesterday, and I talked to an assistant principal in that same county 2 days ago. And both of them said that they've heard from the get-go that they're going to be backed up and not start on the 8th with the rest of Georgia, but they haven't been given official word yet. And they're getting emails from coaches and texts from coaches and from parents, and everybody wants to know. But the reality is right now, I just think somebody said earlier, scared to make a decision.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to be wrong.
We had our booster club, that communicates a bunch of stuff just out to all the parents at once. We had them put out, just a general statement with the GHSAs giving clearance. But until our county makes a decision, we don't have any further information, at this time, just so, we're not fielding phone calls and messages, and they're not, sending them a bunch of stuff, because they don't have a clue. There's just, the booster club,
Yep.
So, same thing, players and us just saying, hey, you just got to sit and be patient and, hopefully be ready.
So I guess, here's one for y'all. And this, again, we've got at least two people on our staff that like to think worst case scenario, I think, at all times. I try not to, but sometimes you can't avoid it. Here's our question, right? So let's say it's week 2 of the season. We play a team on Friday night, win, lose, doesn't matter, whatever. I'd like to say we win. And then we turn around on Monday and their middle linebackers tested positive. So now that entire team's got to quarantine. Does our entire team have to quarantine for 14 days? So do we forfeit the next 2 games automatically? Right? Like what does that process look like for us in the fall when we're having to deal with all this shit on top of regular season? Like I don't, I'm very curious to see where that leads us, and what that looks like. I would love to say it's not going to be an issue, but I really don't know. Especially,
I can tell you because our state's already kind of addressed this a little bit, and what they've kind of floated out is it's really no different than if you play a kid on the other team that has the flu, looking at the age demographic that we're dealing with.
Yep.
That has a very low possibility of getting this virus, that it's no different than if you play and Billy, the middle linebacker from the other team, comes up with the flu on Saturday. Well, okay, you got to watch your kids.
Yep.
But you're going to be watching them anyway. And all of a sudden, okay, Mikey that plays center, coach, I'm not going to be at practice today, I'm sick. Stay your ass at home.
Right.
And so that's kind of how ours have looked at it, as that we get to that point, it's going to be like the flu.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Right.
So
that makes sense too. That's logical.
It does. Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear they've thought that far ahead. I agree with you. I think it's logical. You look at, like you said, the student population and what the numbers look like for them, and particularly the hospitalization numbers for that age group are extremely low. That doesn't mean my fat ass won't end up in a hospital. But those kids are usually statistically seem to be a little bit better off. So
now, Pete's talking about statistics. I can kind of get a little more in depth with that. My wife is a nurse. So we had went down to Florida when all this had started, and wound up being quarantined down there at her parents' house for 7 weeks.
Congratulations.
She's still down there, but she's been doing all the COVID-19 testing at the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium for, I don't know, like 8.5 weeks now.
Wow.
So they get direct reports from like all the 2, 3, 4-star generals that come through. They get all the accurate information, not all the stuff that you see out on all the different media stuff. And based on the numbers the stuff she's brought home to me, she's like, it's being blown out of proportion like nothing she's ever seen. She's like, I'm gonna keep working because they're paying me good money. But she's just like, you got people come through and you got on a mask, but the other people in your car don't, and then you're only gonna want to test one person. So like the way the numbers are and everything's totally misconstrued. But she's like, really, a lot of the people that are testing positive this have some type of precondition or underlying condition that this is able attacking, or something that people didn't know that they had, and now they're getting the COVID because it's bringing that to light because of the way that the bacteria is able to attack and able to spread.
Right.
But when it goes, they just started the antibody testing the other day, and she came home and brought me the numbers. I think they did like 320 antibody tests. It was 4 people. She said it's a 0.0, and they did this consistently, and it's a 0.0125%.
Wow.
And she said, and she gave me like a breakdown of everybody that's like tested positive for it and this, that, and the other, but like if there was like a kid, it was because they were with somebody that had some other type of pre-existing illness or something like that, so they were, I'm trying to forget what the term is, like more susceptible, I guess, to getting sick. Or somebody feel free to throw in the other term. I'm having a brain fart right now. But, that's what she said, like there's no reason that, we shouldn't be able to return back to doing all these normal things. She said, but I understand, the government and the society we live in, just trying to take precaution, trying to save face for everybody and stuff like that, so it's better to prepare for worst case scenario.
For sure.
Matriculate, back to normalcy instead of not doing anything at all, and God only knows what would happen.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was talking to somebody about recently was, you look at some of the other countries that have opened back up, and even states like Georgia that have opened back up, and you're not seeing a huge spike in numbers. The problem is, even when you look at those other countries, you're not seeing like their sporting events don't look like ours, right? I mean, I sat down and watched a German soccer league, watched the Bundesliga, and it was an empty stadium, and they're out there playing the match. You can hear the ball echo, So like, I wish there was a precedence out there, and I know, like I think in Sweden, which has handled things crazy the whole time, and their numbers have been pretty low. But like, I mean, they're back in school and have been for quite some time. But I wish there was a model that we could look at that was, 2 months, 3 months ahead of us in all of this spreading, that had now brought back concerts and sporting events where we could see, okay, let's throw a bunch of people in the stadium. What happens, right? Does the model change then? But to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't exist right now. But I'm also not a very learned man when it comes to that.
One of the things that they kind of like talked to them about was, about trying to get back to a sense of normalcy as quick as possible, so everybody can, quote unquote, build up immunity to it. So if something happens, you're able to help, kind of like, getting a flu shot. Because I asked her, I said, so what if nobody ever got the flu shot anymore? Would anybody ever get the flu? So yeah, I mean, like that's just me. Last time I got a flu shot, I almost died of pneumonia. I
got one this year for the first time in probably 10 years, and I only got it because I had a newborn baby at home.
Yeah. And that's what she said. She's like, they told us, like, until everybody gets out and you get back active and moving and doing all this type of stuff, like it's not going to be able to, like, work itself out. She said it eventually is going to phase, I guess, because she's been able, stuff that she can't even tell me, like of the research information that they've given them, as far as just keeping them in the loop, because they're right there, handling everything, and they're working with, the armed forces to do, all this testing and stuff. So
they get all the fun HIPAA laws they have to deal with as well.
Oh, no doubt.
So,
Coach, I know it's different. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go.
There's several of you guys in this chat that have been coaching a while. I don't remember what year it was, like 08, 09, somewhere in that range when we had the swine flu, I think it was. I remember you just going back to your comment about when players get it, and I know this is a completely different, virus and all that. But I remember we played a district game and we had 6 starters out for that game, and the other team had 5 or 6. They just didn't play. But I remember we played the game and we moved forward, and there was a lot of sickness involved for those couple of weeks, but it kind of went away after that. So, I know this is a different virus and much more, I'm not a scientist by any means, but I just thought I would throw that out there. I remember that and going through that, obviously not to this degree, but as far as players getting it was very similar to what Coach Cope was talking about with like the flu and things like that. And going back to the numbers, from the age of 0 to 49 in the state of Kentucky, we have a 0.005 right now.
Right. Well, so let me ask this, because to everybody, like, is anybody worried that you're going to have kids that show up to school even though they feel like shit, and they're going to show up to workouts when they should probably be at home? I mean, that's one of the conversations we've already talked about having with our kids. If you feel bad, you feel bad. Now, there's going to be kids that say they feel bad and they're going to stay home because they don't want to get out of bed. That right? We know that. But there's also going to be those kids that either at our place, they have nowhere else to go and they want to be around their boys, or they think that I have to be there and they're going to show up. And, I know some schools that have gone out and bought a bunch of infrared thermometers, and they're going to try to take kids' temperatures when they get there. Anybody going that far as trying to police that outside of, in Georgia, we literally have a sheet we have to give them daily, and they have to sign it daily, saying that they have not been in contact, they haven't been in the red zone, and they haven't had a fever over 100.4, I think is the magic number. Anybody going as far as to popping a thermometer on the kid's forehead or anything?
Oh,
they floated that out for us in our school district, and our school district is a little – there's 4 6A high schools, which in Texas is 2,300 to Allen that has almost 7,000. But we're the only one of the 4 that financially can do that.
Right.
The other 3, the district would have, and so we're like playing communism. If you want us to test it, you got to buy us the thermometer, just like you got to buy everybody else. And that kind of put the kibosh on that, because then all of a sudden, well, you've got enough money, you buy your own. Bullshit.
Right. Give them for everybody. Yeah.
And when you start looking at the price of that
it's
goes down the toilet in a hurry.
We were talking to a coach yesterday, and his program is like yours. They can afford it. It's not going to ever be an issue. And they had some parent give them like 20 of them, and they turned around and bought another 5. And it's just, but when you got that money, you can do that, and that's not our reality. I mean, hell, I've got one that I use for the grill and the cast iron skillet and the fryer, but does it work the same when I shoot the laser on their forehead? I don't know. So I bought that one for like $12 on Amazon. I'm not sure how accurate it is sometimes.
Oh, Lord.
That's the best I got. So, yeah, so I was curious to know if anybody else was going to try to dive that deep into it. Anybody got anything else, fellas? I got the information I wanted tonight. Anybody got anything?
Yeah. Is anybody concerned with, and how are you, and if so, how are you combating parents that are saying, well, we're too worried about our kid playing football this year, and I don't want little Johnny going out there and getting sick, and has anybody run into that issue, and how did you answer that question and kind of put those parents at ease?
My starting right guard. That's the best answer I got for you right now. Is our starting right guard's family just they're not they're from a different part of the world, and they're a little extra cautious in regards to everything, not just the one thing. But it's a lose-lose battle for a coaching staff, but it's a win-win battle for the family, right? Let them feel like they can make that decision now, so that maybe and hopefully, right, you stay in contact with little Jimmy, so that in January, when we're all good and great and grand, well, look, you believed in us for these 4 months. we owe you this much more in terms of hopefully he's a sophomore or junior. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's my train of thought, and what I brought up to our head coach and our offensive staff today is, look, like it is what it is, you know.
That when I mentioned earlier, the offensive line place a lot of our kids are working out at and have been going to. Our kids started doing that in February, and they had to shut down when the state shut down, and then when they opened back up, one of the kids sent me a text. He said, "Coach," he said, "they're opening back up. But some of the kids, their parents won't let them go. What do I tell them?" I said, "You tell them when they feel comfortable. You'd love to see them there, but it's okay. If they don't go, they don't go." And there's going to be kids that on June 8th, if that's our first day in the weight room, they aren't there because mama doesn't let them show up.
That's right.
And my hope is they're there by August 1st. And here's the reality, right? And we can say what we want to as coaches, but they're either going to do enough to get themselves in position to make a difference or they're going to get left behind, right? They're either going to be the better player on the field or they're not. That's reality. You know, one of the best damn football players that I've ever coached was a kid named Dejon Parker, and he played 1 year of football, and that was his junior year of high school. And he was gone all summer because he played on LeBron James' AAU team. And he ended up his AAU coach talked him out of playing his senior year, playing football. And he ended up going to Vanderbilt for basketball and then transferring somewhere else after that. But the kid was phenomenal. He was natural. It didn't matter if he was with us all summer long, and our kids didn't give a damn because, the kids are different than us. We get pissed when a kid doesn't show up for 2 weeks. Our kids get pissed when a guy doesn't show up because they know he's being lazy. But our kids know when a guy's at home because he's got to work and then mom and daddy need him to work to pay the bills. You know what I'm saying? And they don't get mad about it. So we had that talk today. I mean, I as much as I want every kid there, I don't think we can be pissed when they're not there right away. It is our job to do the best we can to keep our kids safe so that when that parent reevaluates it in July and then all the other parents are telling them, listen, they're doing a great job. My kids have felt safe. They've done everything by the rules. That parent goes, okay, let's start sending them. Yep. That's my thought.
I like that.
And that's a good thing, a good way to use social media. And we've talked about this. We're going to have, the first day back, you're going to see Coach Garza wiping down the stuff, and you're going to see, Coach Jordan, doing the water, for them into their bottles, if they and Coach fill in the blank, making sure it's only one at a time in the bathroom. And so then we can sit there and look, Mom, we're cleaner than the Walmart or the Kroger that you're trashing your kid in, that you're taking your kid to. So give us a chance. But Rhett, you can probably remember this. Pete, we're about the only three on here with much gray on our head. But there was a time when the summers, the weight room would be open, but the coaches, there was nothing organized. And if kids didn't have to work, or they could, they might come at 6 a.m. or they might come at 6 p.m. and we were just happy to see them.
Yeah.
We get pissed off if they miss one day, in the middle of June.
And you just brought up another thing too, Wes, that I'm curious about is water bottles.
I wrote down the same thing.
You can't have, kids drinking out of the same water bottles like we've done in the past and sharing water. So how are you doing that? Are you telling them to bring their own water bottle? Or you find 100?
Our parish mandated they bring their own water jug.
Yeah.
And we're also, like, our phase 1, we're not allowed in the weight room for the next 2 weeks starting June 8th. Like, we were for June 8th, we can't go into the weight room for 2 weeks after that, for the next 2 weeks.
But what we're going to do is, because with us, like, if I am in charge of the water, I can fill their water bottles up because they don't want them drinking out of water fountains. But what we're talking about doing is just buying. Now, our summer strength conditioning, we do 7 through 12, and we average right around 300 a year.
Wow.
Now, and that's we also, but that's for all sports.
Okay. Yeah.
If the soccer kids we do our off season, but if the soccer kids want to come, the basketball kids want to come, the girls, I'm also the head girls track coach, and I'll have 25 girls go through it.
Yep.
But we're just going to give every kid a water bottle, put their name on it, and you either bring your own or use this one. Period.
Our booster club last year, and it's kind of a fortunate because we had them. They went out and bought 150 water bottles, and they were actually little shaker bottles, and they got them cheap on Amazon. It didn't cost much, and we ended up not issuing them all out. So I think we're going to be able to issue them out and let kids use those this time around. But you can get those things, whether you're telling kids to bring them or you're buying them, you can get them for cheap. That's that, but I had not thought about that. So I just wrote that down about the water bottles.
Yeah, and I think we got them for like 80 cents or something on one of those custom water bottles. No print on them. You just buy
I think one thing we discussed was, as far as, the kids bringing their own water bottle, but then trying to have each family, like go to Walmart and get one of the 40 packs of water and bring it and us keep it in storage.
Yeah.
So that way, whenever kids ran out of water in their water bottle, we don't want them refilling it at fountains or whatever else. Then we can just, give them, one of these plastic bottles, and then they can just, drink that and then be able to throw it away. So that way, we open it up, they hand it to them. If we want to put it on ice or something, we can do that, because it's not like, a community water bottle. It's sealed, has its own cap, can be thrown away, afterwards. They're the only ones to be able to touch it.
And you do that, and it's not expensive, right? You're always going to have families that don't. You're going to have some that can't. But the reality is, you're asking them to go spend $4. You
Right.
know, and whether you're in a program, we've done that in the past where we've said, hey, we need all juniors bring a thing of peanut butter, bring a jar of peanut butter. And then, we find a way to get the bread and jelly provided. Because that's one thing we've talked about is the past 2 summers, our kids have been fed every day. Now, they're not fed the way that some big-time programs do. But in the summers, we've been able – our trainers are actually – our girls come up, our high school girls, and they just make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And when our kids transition from the weight room to the field, in the past, we have given them 20 minutes. Sit down, drink, put your cleats on, eat your peanut butter and jelly, or we have something alternate for kids with allergies. That's going to have to go away for us, how we handle kind of some of that stuff. But when you're asking them to bring something like peanut butter or a case of water, and you're asking them to do it, hey, sophomores, you bring it this week, 2 weeks from now, juniors, you bring it. Parents can do that. You're spreading it out enough. $4 isn't going to – hell, we've got a Chick-fil-A across the street, and we got kids that can't afford very much, but they got a cell phone, they got better shoes than I have, and they can walk across the street and eat Chick-fil-A every single day. So,
True.
All right, fellas, anybody else?
No, there's a lot of information tonight, man. I appreciate stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you were here, Coach. Guys, I appreciate everybody coming on. When we started doing this way back in the middle of March, a lot of it's been talking ball, but I've enjoyed getting to know different guys, and I've enjoyed nights like tonight too. We're just talking about different aspects of running the program and things that we're all having to deal with and sort through. I've been doing Mondays, Wednesdays, scrapped that this week. The next one is going to be on Monday. I do have somebody coming on as a wide receiver or tight end coach from a pretty solid Power 5 program. It's kind of one of those deals that I don't jump through the hoops, so I'm not allowed to advertise it. I'm not allowed to broadcast it or whatever. But when I tweet it out next Monday, be on the lookout, because I think he's going to be really good. But outside of that, fellas, I appreciate every one of you. If you come up with something good, hit me up on Twitter. And obviously, y'all are all welcome to always jump back in on these, man. I know, BJ, I want to sit down and talk ball with you sometime anyway. I've heard enough good things to know I need to find a way to make that happen. And Lord knows I've been stealing from Rhett and Wes for the past month and a half. So, Nick, we'll stay in, we stay in conversation. And Corley, welcome to Georgia, brother.
Sir.
Just hope I don't have to compete against you anytime soon.
Oh, goodness. Hell, you might want to.
All right,
Have a great week.
Yeah, you too, man. And hell, for y'all that don't know, McPeak and I have coached the same kid. We're probably the only two in here that have coached the same kid, because he had a kid that started for him on offensive line whose dad was our offensive line coach. So he was living with mom in Kentucky. Dad was our offensive line coach in Georgia. And for his senior year, he came down and mom let him come live with dad. And he was a great player for us, and is now headed back up where Nate is in Kentucky to play college ball. So Yeah, he and I we could sit on here and tell Jake Obuck stories for an hour probably. So
I hate that, Coach, because that took my average offensive line down 20 pounds when he left.
listen, okay, yeah, but you have one signed with Clemson this year, and you got one that's got offers from everybody in the country. So I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's a non-starter, Nate. Sorry.
So, all right, man, I appreciate you. Y'all have a good one. Stay healthy.
All right, guys.
See you.
Thanks, Pete.